Hello everyone, it's Daylight Vienna, and today I'm going to be showing you 5 Minecraft trees that will save your Minecraft build. We all know trees are a very essential part of Minecraft. However, custom trees always add a bit of pizzazz and dynamics to your build. To start off, we're going to be building this weeping willow tree. Now, I built a much bigger version over here. You can customize the size to whatever fits your build. I just think practically speaking, most people are going to use the smaller version. That being said, let's get building. This tree consists of oak wood, stripped jungle wood, stripped oak wood, oak fence, spruce fence, oak leaves, mangrove leaves, and azalea leaves. For this weeping willow tree, I'm giving it a pretty sturdy base, and then I'm limiting and lessening the leaves as I go up. Honestly, for this first part, before we get into texturing, I just always start a nice base. I can always go back later and detail and change more of it, but that's how I like to start my builds. I think that's a pretty decent trunk. So now let's go in with our stripped oak wood and our jungle wood and just place a little bit to give our tree dimension. And once we create a top of our trunk, we're going to take either our oak fences or our spruce fences and just create a bunch of random branches going out in different directions. We don't want them to be severely detailed or organized because that's not how trees grow. Before we start on the leaves, I'm going to show you what really makes a weeping willow tree a weeping willow tree. In real life, weeping willow trees grow in clusters. I think of them as clusters. So you have this central block where you're going to have a group of leaves come down this way. You're going to have a group of leaves come from the back, and think of it as going straight down. And maybe even coming back some. You're going to have a group of leaves come this way, and a group of leaves come this way. It's like everything stems from the end of the branch. And so if we go over to our example tree over here, a lot of the stuff stems from these branches. And for this build, I'm using 3 different kinds of leaves because I find that it creates a lot more dimension. Instead of having a single tree, you have a lot more variations of the main color that your eyes can draw to. If we take our leaves, we're going to just place them alongside of it like it's just draped off of the branch. And I also sometimes like to go in and just put different leaves on the different lines, so it creates another dimension there. And also as I bring these leaves down, I may also bring them back. And now that you've finished one little cluster, you're going to do that pretty much all the way around the tree. It's also really important to remember while you're building to create these air gaps. The best custom trees have lots of room for air. As we get to the front, I'm going to start to raise the leaves a little bit more. For example, in this tree, I want you to still be able to see this tree, but I also still want those long lines draping and creating that canopy. A great front of your tree is going to have a lot of dimension. You don't want a very flat front because that will significantly de-elevate your build. And the best weeping willow trees have multiple levels to the build. So we have our first layer of drapes here, our second layer of drapes here, and the more you add, honestly, the better looking yours is going to be. Now for the top of this tree, you want to keep it fairly rounded. If we go over here, our tree is going to have air gaps in them because honestly, real trees have air gaps. I just place these blocks randomly. We can always go back and break stuff. I just try for the most part to make sure the branches are covered up on the top, but if you leave a couple out, that's not going to be bad. And if we come back and look at here, we can see that this left side is a little dull, so we're going to beef it up a little bit better. And that is significantly better. And my favorite part of these weeping willow trees is that the inside, you can see all of the branches. We didn't cover them up down here. Now, I suppose you could, but I think that it gets rid of the character and you get rid of those gaps of air that are oh so important in designing custom trees. So that's our weeping willow tree. On to our next tree. This is our dead tree. So if we grab our blocks, I use dark oak wood, spruce wood, stripped dark oak logs, dark oak planks, dark oak stairs, dark oak slabs, and dark oak fences. We're going to take our dark oak wood and just build a thicker shape. In this example over here, I left the middle open. I'm going to take a large chunk of this and just go straight up. Next, we're going to take our stripped dark oak log and just build up like we did with our dark oak look. Once we have a significant line, we're going to take our 2 blocks and just kind of blend those together. And then next we're going to take our spruce wood and blend those together as well. Next, we're going to take our dark oak wood and create a sort of stairwell swirling around this tree. I think all great trees have a sort of swirl motion that goes around it. It creates a lot more dimension than just a singular pillar of wood in the sky. And we'll go back up here and beat this all up later, so it's okay if your stairway, quote unquote, isn't super duper clean. Then we're also going to sprinkle in these different blocks. And after you sprinkle them in a little bit, we're going to then move down to our base. Honestly, just make sure it's beefed out a little bit. There isn't any sort of strict rules you gotta follow because at the end of the day, this is your tree. So you make this what you think looks good. What you're going to want to do for this top of the tree is just create 2 big branches going up in the sky. These need to be fairly thick because they are the very ends of your tree. And it's always okay to go back and beef these up after you make them. And they can look as weird and funky as you want. Once we finish the tentative top of our tree, we're going to take our dark oak planks and create lots of just branches straight out. And again, I like to make them very random looking where they're not symmetrical at all. It's just wherever my mouse ends up clicking them. And I can always go back and clean them up. For example, there doesn't need to be 4 right here, but it does help me create a really fast line. I started on the midway point of this example, but you can start as far down or as far up as you want. I think a really key thing to avoid when making branches on trees is do not create excessively straight lines. These are okay. This is great, where it curves around like a tree actually would. I like to create a base first and then I can add my stair blocks to ripen the space. Once you're happy with your branch sizes and lengths, we're going to take our fence blocks and just drape them down like we did in this example. And it's okay to combine them sometimes. I think the more you have, the better this tree is going to look because these are going to be your branches that create this very dead and dry feel. Look at the difference in this left and right side. Immediately my eye is drawn to the dreariness and downtroddenness of this left side. The right side is cool, but I think the left adds so much more to the build. Before we finish this build, we're going to take some of our trunk blocks and just replace some of these branch blocks with them. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to fix the top of this tree. This was always a tentative top of the tree, but now we can really bring these out a little bit more and give a solid end to our tree. It's messy and sad and dreary, but that's the point of it because I think that's what really embodies a dead or dying tree. It's very eerie and very disheartening. So now if we go to our next tree, it's a very tropical build. The blocks I used for it was jungle wood, stripped spruce wood, jungle fences, and jungle leaves. For this build, it's going to be a little slanted, so we're going to take our jungle wood and create a little bit of a base, but then we're going to make it go up and slant this way, kind of like this. But we want to make sure that we give the trunk a lot of beef because the bottom of the trunk is where you're going to have your support for the entire tree. I think a good rule for this trunk is try and get about 4 blocks before you go to the next level. And always make sure to have 2 blocks of the trunk at all times. And there's our 4. Then we can switch to our spruce wood. And then once we hit our 4 again, we can go to our jungle wood. If we just build up, then that will become the top of our tree. And then similar to our weeping willow, we're going to take these fences and create branches. Now because it is a palm tree, we don't want too many branches because the leaves already are very particular, so you can't just place them willy-nilly. Now that we have a little shape, we're going to take our jungle leaves and just create some nice curves in our leaves. Now this is going to be a little bit more meticulous, where you're actually deliberately placing blocks. I'm also taking these mangrove leaves and adding them various places to give it a little bit more dimension, and we're going to try and get about 6-ish of these leaves. There isn't really a particular number, but I think 5 or 6 is more than just 1 on each side. The more you place, the more you may realize that your branches are not placed in great places, so you can always get rid of them and make sure to kind of cover up your branches. This tree is going to be one where you want to cover up more of your branches. If you leave some of them out, that's fine. It's of course your build. I think it's gonna look better personally if you have the shape over the wood element. So right now we have 5 little palm branches. I think that's a good number. And you can always add jungle wood up here for the coconut aspect. Okay, for a big pine tree, we're going to start off with a pretty big pillar into the sky. We're just going to go up as high as you really want. When you get to a height that you're okay with starting to blend your next layer up, then you can go ahead and do that. And then once you reach another height that you're okay with blending your next section, then once we have our little pillar in the sky, we're going to take some of our base blocks and just build a nice little base to this trunk. Just something that would hold up a pine tree. We can always go fix the bottom later, but for right now, we're going to start with these branches. And something to keep in mind as you're going up is to make your branches shorter and shorter, because if they're the same length, then you're never gonna end your tree. Then once you finish your branches, you can go ahead and just start placing blocks. For the most part, you're going to want to cover up all of these branches. You can leave some branch part exposed, but for the most part, especially underneath, you're going to want to cover most of it. And sometimes you're going to need to go in and clean up your stuff to give a little bit more space and create some more air into your build. This is very dense and very flat, so it's always important to go in and make sure that there is some dimension and levels to your leaves. And so already we've kind of finished this one side. There is stuff like I may bring this out a little bit more because it seems a little bit short and stubby. But compared to the other side, it's already significantly nicer. Okay, and for the next bit, we're going to add the top of our tree. We're going to give it a point like a Christmas tree because that's honestly what we're making, is we're making a pine and those are evergreen trees like Christmas trees. And the last thing we're really going to do for this tree is we're going to put leaves on the front of it. And honestly, we're going to trim this down a little bit because I felt that the branches were a little bit too long for the bottom of this tree because I did make it a tad bit smaller than this tree. Oh, hello! And they're still a little bit too wide and too much for this tree. But I think the point still stands is you can add as many branches as you want, regardless if we move on to our next tree. This is definitely a tree that is a lot more practical than probably all of these, with the exception of the weeping willow. I used oak wood, stripped spruce wood, spruce planks, spruce stairs, spruce slabs, oak leaves, and azalea leaves to create this build. I think the spruce logs look very, very similar to the oak wood, so that's why I chose all those spruce logs. We're gonna start with creating just a little baby pillar in the sky. Not very big, just a little bit to create our first build up. Then you can play around with where you want these to go. I usually like to slant my trees a certain direction because I feel like that gives them a little bit more character. And you could just place stuff where you like, and I like to add stairs and slabs to help really slope it down. Once we get to the top of what we really want our tree to look like, we're gonna go ahead and just create those little bitty branches. We don't want a lot because this is a pretty simple tree, but just enough to kind of give it a solid little base. Then we're just going to take our mashup of oak and azalea leaves and just kind of fluff it up. And I think for this tree in particular, the more you fluff it up, the better it's going to look. Obviously, it's a little flat right here, but I think the more billowy it looks, the better it's going to feel. And I think that's it for this tree. I think that's going to be it from me with all of our trees. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It would really help me out, especially since I just started this channel. Which tree was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope you have an absolutely lovely week. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!